Optimus Prime here, and I'm joined, as always, by the indomitable Moth. Hi, Moth.
Hi,
He's outside
Simon.
of my screen. Um, right, today we have the absolute pleasure of talking about the 1986 staple of our fandom, Transformers the movie. It was released in the US on August I've forgotten the date, 8th, 1986, and arrived in the UK in December 86. I think I saw it at the beginning of 1987, if I recall correctly. But yes, so it was basically Transformers as a brand had like exploded in the sort of first couple of years of its release. 84, 85 were huge, and before even those years were fully out, they were already preparing Transformers the movie, to the extent that the cartoon didn't really know where it was going for a while because of the effects of the movie, and that's even more prevalent in Japan. But we'll get to that in a little bit later. But it was such a massive success, and they knew that they had basic gold on their hands. So Hasbro basically went into production of the film as early as when was it? When did it go into production? You had a thing about it, and I've lost it. It was sort of end of 84, beginning of 85, wasn't it? They started thinking about it, and
Uh,
then yeah,
Various iterations and we've seen aspects of that. Some of it can be seen in the comics, and we saw that some of that at TFN. But yeah, it was in they very early on knew they were going to do a movie.
yeah. So it went into production and was released, as I said, in August of 1986 to a fantastic reception, and it made all of the expected money, and everybody was really happy with it. Okay, that's not true. That is, unfortunately, lies. However much we as fans love Transformers the movie, it did not have a good reception when it came out. It made close to no money. Well, actually, it did make no money. It made which is worked out is about $150,000 less than its budget. Budget of 6 million, and it made in its initial run only 5.8 million, which is I don't. No, no, that's a bomb. That is a bomb. A film that does not make its money back is a
Yeah.
bomb. And obviously, you got to add on to that marketing and everything else, which would have cost some money. So yes, it didn't make money. It was a bomb. It had a massive effect on some future products for Hasbro down the line. The G.I. Joe movie was uh, massively retooled and wasn't given the full cinematic release that Transformers was as a direct result of this. But anyway, let's forget about all the negative things of a film not making any money. That's not what makes a film good. Um, yeah, so what are your earliest recollections of watching Transformers the movie, Moff?
So I like most people, as we just heard, I didn't see it in the cinema. I saw it on VHS or Betamax. I don't actually know. I always think it was Betamax, but I have never been able to find a Betamax copy to make me confident that is the case. So I think it was VHS. And I think the interesting bit for it is that I've never seen it in the cinema. We were talking beforehand about the fact that it's had kind of special releases in America. I know that on one of the streams, Hasbro were shocked that the UK had never really, the UK don't get the same small releases that the US get. So I am continually hopeful for the movie's 40th anniversary. We will get a cinema release, and I'll have the chance to go see it on the big screen. But yeah, my first memories are seeing it on VHS and seeing it a lot of times on VHS. Safe to say, I always, when I talk to people about your favorite thing, so whether it be movie, album, video game, I always say your favorite has to be the one you've watched the most. Whether you say, "Oh, my favorite's The Godfather because I'm cool and I'm a bit more educated." No, no, my favorite has to be Transformers because I've seen it so many times I would never be able to count it. I own it more times than I'm proud to admit. Um, it's a weird obsession to buy every copy when a new one comes out, but I have watched it so many times, and that started from as a child. It was the only two films I remember as a kid rewatching and rewatching as a child was Transformers the movie and Labyrinth, and I remember watching them and quite happily putting them back on straight after. Really, really evocative feelings from the film.
Um, I saw it at the cinema. I have very, very vivid memories of seeing it at the cinema. I remember my cousin took me to the cinema to the Pool Arts Centre in Dorset, and I went and saw it. My two cousins, one of them worked at the cinema, and the other one took me to see it. And the intermission, my other cousin brought us ice cream. I must have been, what, 8, 9, maybe 8. Yeah, 8. That's very young. And as I said earlier, I reckon it must have been the end of the Christmas holidays of that December. So it would have been sort of edging towards January. And I distinctly remember seeing it. I remember seeing it on the screen. I remember elements of it. I remember Optimus Prime dying. And even at that young age, I didn't believe he was dead. I don't know what I was basing that on. I don't know. Maybe I just didn't think people died at that point in my life. But even then, he went grey and everything else, and I thought, yeah, but he's a robot. He'll get rebuilt and he'll be back again in another whatever. But yes, uh, that's how I remember seeing it. And then after that, I don't. Again, like Moth, I've got numerous DVD copies. I've got a DVD steelbook signed by Stan Bush, which is very, very precious. And I've got numerous other copies, including the one that came out a couple of years ago that Xavi did, that had all the artwork and everything in it.
Yeah, that was nice.
That
That
was
was
very
nice.
pretty. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I got that one. But I didn't
You
have
know,
it
it's an
on.
interesting one. Have you seen the it's is it reconstructed? I think it's called, or deconstructed. It's a blue box. I remember it being a blue
Hmm,
box, and it takes essentially the original print and then just instead of making it a widescreen, it probably just takes out because they obviously cut a little bit away
hmm.
from it all just to make it perfect. So you see all this kind of artwork that's not really finished on it. It's a
Huh,
really interesting watch.
I don't think
Not
I've
one
seen that.
like I've watched it once. I watched it once when I got it. I've never watched it again. I did think about watching it again for this, but I chose to watch a different version of it. There's so many versions, I know we're going to talk about that, but that's an interesting one that I don't hear many people talk about. I remember it coming at the time and being very curious about it. There's a lot of good kind of additional content on it as well, talking about the making of. So that's an interesting one. If you've not seen it, I recommend picking it up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, unlike Moth, I didn't see it a lot as a kid. I didn't have the VHS. I My parents were very funny about buying videos. If you could record it off the telly, we didn't need to buy videos. So we didn't have
Yeah,
like
same.
today, how we have just hundreds and hundreds, well, used to have hundreds and hundreds of DVDs and videos. I dumped an entire massive box of VHSs at my friend's
Same.
parents' house so that they could give them out to all the neighbors, which is interesting. But yeah, I mean, I had it on. I did eventually get a VHS copy. It was interestingly the first film I ever bought on digital off of Apple iTunes. The first time I bought anything to have a digital copy of that I'd paid for rather than. I mean, I always pay for everything I download digitally, always. But yeah, it was the first one I did with that, and but again, it is something that I've seen like a countless number of times. I had a VHS copy, and back in the old days when I used to work at Games Workshop, we had a video player in the room, in the shop that we used to have to play promotional videos on, and we'd get in early to work or would have stock take or whatever, and we had like three videos in the shop that would just stick on all the time, and one of them was Transformers the movie. It's a film that I persuaded people to watch off the basis of it being a decent sci-fi movie, regardless of whether you like Transformers or whether you're into Transformers. And I've actually managed to persuade people to watch it on that basis. Whether or not they've agreed with me is entirely beside the point. But it's a good, solid film. You don't need to have a massive connection to Transformers to enjoy it for what it is. It has a decent storyline. It has a
It also has the thing that you get nowadays with animated movies of proper decent casts. Like
yeah,
you go to see an animated film in the cinema nowadays, you'll have a Steve Carell or somebody like that. You have real actors doing it,
yeah,
and we had that. We had that at a point where the cartoon already had its actors and actors. It had people already built in, and then they bring in Leonard Nimoy, who is just outstanding in it. Eric
absolutely.
Idle, Orson Welles, like it is the voice acting in it is something to think about and go. In 1980s, they pulled that off
Yeah,
and went, we'll invest in big names to make it have that little bit of a something special. And I think there's something to be said for that. The
yeah.
delivery of some of the lines, some of the lines really hit home because the delivery is so good.
I mean, even when like Robert Stack, his Ultra Magnus was awesome. He had like it suited the character so well. He was this very by the book stoic character whose voice, the acting, it perfectly portrayed that. Um, and obviously all the cartoon voices are there. Obviously you've got your Prime, and obviously you've got Megatron and Starscream, but uh, limitedly. Um, yeah, and then what that then had a slightly jarring effect for was that when the movie was done, and when you went back to the animated series, suddenly all of these characters had different voices because they weren't going to be paying for Leonard Nimoy for every episode for Galvatron, and the same goes for the majority of the others. So it went back to being these sort of standard voice actors doing most of those voices. Um, but yeah, not to a massive detriment because obviously Frank Welker took back on Galvatron, and Frank Welker is Frank Welker, so he's just almost perfect in every role that he ever does. Um, but yeah, so other than the actual the movie itself, we obviously had the accompanying toy line, which arrived the beginnings of no, none of it came out. Did any of it come out in '86? Most of it did, didn't it? Sorry, I'm being
Also, there was some that wasn't like Galvatron's like an '87
yes,
release, but it's still a movie toy, and I think that's
yeah,
we talked about this in previous episodes. When things come out
it
and when they actually hit stores, some
yeah,
stores like back in the '80s, some stores wouldn't put the line out until the previous line had cleared. So
exactly,
actually, store it might have had an '86 release, but we still saw '86 toys and '88, for example. So
yeah,
the lines are blurred. So I always just think about what's the movie. For this one's easier because it's just what's the kind of movie toys. And whilst we got a good selection, we still missed some.
yeah,
As
yeah.
was partial for the case, the cause for the US, for the US versus UK. But we got the main ones. We got Wheelie.
Of course. Why would you
Important.
ever not want a wheelie? Actually,
um, I literally am sitting fiddling with my wheelie as my fidget watch just now. But you got your wheelie, you got your Springer. This is the first. We talked about it in for this year's toys, kind of changing up. I think like a Springer still feels like the old school. It
mm,
still feels the kind of diaclone feel to it. It doesn't massively shift from it. But then when you look at Blur, Hot Rod, and Cut, they're just something else. Something totally different. And that's when we start to shift into the kind of transition year. I think this year's a very much a transition year.
I remember a friend of mine having Springer, and I'm pretty sure he had him before the film, and therefore I don't. I remember him being in the film and being like, "Ah, it's Springer, that character I know," as opposed to thinking of Springer as a Transformers the movie character, if that makes sense. Most of the rest are definitely in my
I
mind.
think Ultra Magnus was the same. I'm sure Ultra Magnus was a toy that came out just before the kind of movie, but they're synonymous with the movie. That's where you're introduced to them. You're not getting your generic season 2 episode going, "Oh, hi, I'm Springer.
Yeah.
I spring."
I'm just thinking of the ones that I actually had contact with as a kid, because, as I said in previous episodes, Transformers is in my memory, playing with toys as a kid in the 80s was a much more of a communal thing. There's lots of kids in the area I lived, and we all used to play together, and we always used to have different toys for different toy lines. And I think between uh myself and my friends, there was somebody had Wheelie, somebody had Springer, I had Hot Rod. I didn't get Cup until Target Master Cup, so we'll forget that. Didn't have Optimus Prime. I think a friend had Wreck-Gar, but had lost all of his additional parts. Um, I never saw. Oh wait, I'm looking on non-UK. Let's go back to UK. There we go. I was going to say I never saw Frenzy and Rat Bat because
I think the only one that wasn't really was was Ratbat, which
yeah,
which is a movie toy because it's the first time you see him, but it doesn't feel like a movie toy because it's just it's a cassette bot.
It's another cassette bot. Nor I never saw over here at all. In fact, I didn't see a Nor figure until I started being part of the Transformers community. I think I went round to Dave, Toy Jester, Toy Hunter Jester, Dave Wright's house. He had a ton of stuff, including Nor. It's the first time I ever saw one. Cyclonus and Scourge, though. I had Cyclonus. I might have got him a little bit later, but he was one of my favorite figures. Such a cool toy. But then, as you pointed out, Galvatron wasn't released until '87, so a bit further down the line. But again, my brother had him. I had Ultra Magnus. Didn't get Optimus Prime though. Just saying. And Galvatron with all of his making noises, and also one of the things I distinctly remember most about the Galvatron toy was how ratchety and noisy he was. I remember getting told off by my parents for playing with him in the back of the car.
Yeah, I always think that the Ultra Magnus toy, and I imagine I'm not the only one that had this canon in their head of that, and we talk about a dead Prime, but it was when you think about the movie and he's passing off the leadership. To me, it felt as if the toy, that was what the toy was based on. It was like, we're going to make a Prime that's going to be the evolution of Prime, and he becomes Ultra Magnus, and I know that upsets you. But when you're a child, you're trying to kind of put two and two together. I distinctly remember seeing Ultra Magnus before I saw the movie, but as I say, I saw the movie after it was released in the cinema anyway, and just being like, "Oh, it's a white Optimus Prime," and I think then I was almost looking for an explanation when I saw the movie, which doesn't give it an explanation, obviously doesn't, but you then your little brain starts to put these things together.
Yeah. Hot Rod, I remember a friend of mine had before I got him, and their one had metal feet and my one had plastic feet. I think Christmas '87 is when I got my brother got Galvatron, I got Ultra Magnus, he got Starscream, and I got Hot Rod. So it was nearly a year after we saw the film, but those are I remember getting those figures at that point. I also got a camera, so I took photos of them a lot and had little photographs where you get them actually developed of those four figures, which I knew where they were for years and years and years, but I've no idea now. Probably long since gone. But yeah, so other than that, what the Ladybird book?
Ladybird book, which I have. I actually had two copies. I am 44, and for my birthday, my Christmas last year, when I was 43 years old, my mum gave me a copy of Transformers the movie, Ladybird book. I did already have it, so I kindly donated it to Greg. It was a bizarre coincidence. Like about 2 weeks after Christmas, we're chatting, and he was saying he was trying to pick one up, and I was like, I genuinely have just got a second copy. So this is my copy. I do have it on tape as well. The giving Greg my second book copy made me go, I need to own the audio cassette. So I eBayed that. But I didn't have it as a kid. This is a later purchase. Like I do buy almost anything I can that's a movie. I've got like colouring in books and all these crazy bits, and the visuals of it. I mean, that visual, just
That's amazing.
The Hot Rod character, the Hot Rod toy, the just beautiful colours, just really spoke to me. But yeah, the Ladybird book is an interesting. Yeah, the Ladybird audio is on YouTube if they want to hurt their ears by listening to it, because it's not
That's
very
so
good.
good, so good.
It's
We
not
have,
so good. It's terrible.
yeah, but it's also so
It
good.
is terrible.
It's something we actually we didn't get a chance to go over them in some of the other episodes, but the audio books, the audio cassettes, they got worn out when I was a kid. They were
Yes.
enforced car listening when we were on holidays to France or whatever, and drove
Yeah.
down or on the ferry
Same.
or whatever. And yeah, my parents got sick of them. There was Transformers ones. There was a Winnie the Pooh one we used to listen to, and Zoids. There was a Zoid audiobook, which me and my best mate Chris still quote to this day. But anyway, so back onto toys briefly for a second. There are lots of toys that didn't make it to the shelves. There were some significant characters in Transformers the movie, toys of which we have only in the last recent few years been getting significant, decent versions of. So you've got the Quintisons. Never a toy of those until what? When did their first ones of those come out? They were
Official ones. Because we had third party, but official ones. What was the first Quintesson the Kingdom or Earthrise?
I think it was Earthrise. Yeah, it
One
was
of
Earth.
those. One of that
Yeah,
trilogy. One of his
one of
trilogy.
one of that. Yeah, so that's when you got Quintessons and you got the Alicons.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
beautiful. I love them. I think they're really good.
they're really, really nice toy. But Sharkticons we've had obviously since Nor and various versions of them. Unicron, we didn't get a proper Unicron toy until Armada. Despite there being lots of pictures and evidence of the prototype for the G1 version, which was recently released by Super 7 in the reaction figures range.
I
And
love that.
it's
That makes me so happy.
just absolutely the most derpsome doofus. It's just so nice. I remember seeing a picture of it in a magazine. I don't know, it must have been late, well, mid 90s or something. Probably a computer game magazine, thinking on
Yeah.
it. But that was the first time I ever was aware that there was a Unicron toy, and it's wonderfully awful, I think is the way.
It is.
But
It is, and it's the only way we're ever going to see that toy. I
oh
know there's people saying, "Oh, that should be the HasLab." It shouldn't. It really shouldn't.
no,
It will never hold up. It's better to be just a bit of fun, and that's a fun, cheap, kind of silly way to do it. The
yeah,
first time I saw that was a Toy Fair magazine when they were reviewing or previewing the Beast Wars Neo, the one that version that came out, and seeing the two of them together. And again, there was a third party was going to bring that out, and I was tempted. I would have probably bit the bullet and bought that one as well, because I just think, I see if a third party brought a cheap version of the G1 Unicron out, I would probably buy it. Like I'll be honest, I would buy it just for the sheer novelty,
oh
but
yeah,
it shouldn't really be has. I the definitive toys out there now. Like
Oh
there
yeah,
is
no,
no
yeah,
need for another
exactly.
Unicron, and that's the challenge. You couldn't now go back and do the opposite and do the original version. The
Yeah,
Super 7 is a really clever way to give us a version of that toy.
yeah.
Very well done to them. A good use of that type of toy line.
Obviously, the other major one from the line was RC. There was no RC toy for however many years because girl toys don't sell until they do, and then also don't. But that's another matter for another time, I think. But yes, now we have RCs coming literally out of our RC. So many different versions of her in different guises. Right. Let's move on to the comic adaptation, which is
Yeah.
something that Moff is going to talk about because he read it this morning.
Yes, I want to go back and reread it. I had recently read, I think it was only just last year, I reread the IDW version. I was doing a move around in the house and found it. I thought I'm going to reread this again, and it's Bob Budiansky adaptation of the movie, so it's much closer. But the original Marvel run was clearly, when you read it, and I implore MD to, it hasn't read it, go and read it just for curiosity, because it is very, very similar in so many bits. The words, it's word for word what we see, and in other bits, there's so many bits that are different. There's bits like the Autobot transformation, sorry, Autobot City transformation, where they call them Fortress Maximus. And obviously, we know that it visually looked more like Matrix, so it definitely wasn't meant to be that. But that's an interesting bit. The one bit, and we talked about this when we were prepping for this. We were talking about the voice acting. For me, some of the lines, some of the key bits that are so pivotal in me. The biggest one for me for selling, and I like wrestling, and I always think of this like wrestling. The sell job by Cup when Devastator appears, the way he delivers that line. If you've never seen Devastator before that point, or even if you had, you suddenly realize he is something to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And I don't think he ever really was that. And the same as Megatron was never as devastating as he was in the film. He blows characters away. Whereas in the original series, he shoots them and it doesn't have that same impact. So this film has a gravitas to it, and that line is amazing. Not in the comic. The Hot Rod interference, not in the comic. Hot Rod catching the Matrix, which again, look at this Ladybird book. Ladybird book has that on the cover, not in the comic. It is incredible. No transformation of the Jets or Insecticons, which we'll talk in a minute about the controversy around that because you can't not do it. Some really cool bits that the universal greeting's not there, but one cool bit is when the ship with the Dinobots and stuff explodes. You see them in more detail kind of falling. It just Wheelie just appears even more random than normal. Just appears in the pit. The one, and I tell you, the visual of it, and they've got a good panel for it. The Ultra Magnus, where it gets exploded, they lasso him with like energy ropes and then pull him apart. That would have killed that, and on a big screen would have been outstanding. You can see why they didn't do it with the kids. But so there's really differences. The whole premise is pretty much there, but there's some key bits in it. It shows you there's always going to be a difference to when you read something, when you read a comic or a book, to the visual aspect of it and the deliverance of lines, and very much that film has some lines that I quote on a weekly basis. My text message notification is from that movie. That movie has so many brilliant lines delivered so well that just missing from the comic bit. And what would the movie have been if we not had them?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, no, I had the graphic novel of the original Marvel adaptation, and I don't remember it as clearly, but I do remember poring over it and by the cover falling off and it being generally knackered. And I think actually I had that in a period when I hadn't got any access to the film for a while. So yeah. Um, yeah. So let's talk about the controversy quickly because this Zoom meeting is about to run out.
It's not a controversy. It's very obvious what happens in the film, same as that Rumble. So, so I think that the only controversy for not the controversy, the only bit for me was always I was never 100% sure whether it which one Skywarp and Thundercracker is getting transformed because the colors are obviously changed in it. For me, the Scourge and the sweeps is easy because it's one Seeker and two Insecticons. So to me, it's one Seeker and two Insecticons, one Scourge and two
Yeah.
sweeps. That makes sense to me. Like that's simple. But and the way they're positioned, then for me, because I then think that Skywalk, because also he was saying the command. That was also where I thought about it for the Cyclonus. I to me, it's Bombshell that turns out Cyclonus because he's a leader of the Insecticons transforming. But that's more because it kind of changes the percept, like who's in the forefront. So it does. I can see why there's a controversy. It doesn't need to ever be answered. Like that's the thing as well. It doesn't never need to be answered. There's no impact to who's who, really. Let's be honest.
No, there is a second controversy with Transformers the movie, and that is whether or not Rodimus, Hot Rod, actually caused the
comic doesn't
downside.
have it in it, and it still happens. So Hot Rod is blameless.
Sure.
The other bit, do you know what? The other one that I don't see off the top, but I know we know that the Insecticons there's multiples of them. But in this film, there's multiples of lots of characters throughout in the animation.
There's a lot of animation errors. A Dinobot disappears for the entire film for seemingly no reason, and we haven't really even touched upon the trauma of seeing all of your favorite toys like just unceremoniously killed outright, never to return again. And you know,
also I think we didn't know that was the case. We didn't know they were never going to return.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Whoa. And it set a precedent for going forward, like for cartoons in general.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think at the time we just assumed, oh, they've been shot. It's all right. Ratchet will repair them. Like, oh wait, no, Ratchet's also had his eyes turn black. Well, that's fine. I'm sure there's other.
Real Jack.
No, he's also. That's okay. The Protectobots are about to come out. They'll just fix them as an ambulance and stuff there. That's fine. But yeah, so there is that sort of whole side of it with everything just dying. But obviously this was done because it was a toy line, and it's well documented that Hasbro had literally no idea what replacing the old toy line ready for the new toy line, what effect that would have on the children going to the cinema and seeing
the effect was children bought lots of toys because the toy line did outstanding figures that year. So whilst the movie might not have, the toy line it did, and at the end of the day, it was a glorified advert. That's what we need to remember. We need to remember always this was a cartoon to sell toys, and it sold toys by the crap load. 5 crap loads, I think it sold actually.
Yeah, right. At least maybe 6. Sorry.
I think we need to wrap up. We'll do our final bit about our favourite bot from the year then.
Yes. Right,
the guy that dies.
No, it's not Optimus Prime. Although it probably should be. I'm going with Cyclonus. I loved the Cyclonus toy. I played with him to death. His arms used to come off. That was great. And he looked cool. He had a rubber end, and I just loved him. I will talk about him more another time. But I do not have a G1 figure of him to hand. But here, look, there's a Galvatron. Moff.
Cyclonus is one I have not experienced. I'd like to. Mine's is my original Rodimus Prime. I absolutely loved this thing and played with it. So long, and I always say the ones that are still in my collection show how much importance they had for it. So Rodimus Prime is my pick.
Excellent. Right. We may well come back to Transformers the movie another time because this has ended up being a little bit quicker than we intended to. But that's not a problem. Anyway, I will leave you now. Goodbye from me, and goodbye from Mr. Moff. Back next week for Transformers 1987. Bye.